So this first piece, does that sound better? This first piece is based loosely on a childhood friendship that awakened my sense of romance and danger and connection between those two things. And an earlier version was published this spring by Empty House Press, but it's part of a longer coming-of-age piece that I'm currently working on. It's called Birds of Oregon. You and I perched like birds of prey there at the edge of the water, together yet remote, our shoulders hunched against the cold air, folded like dark wings down the centers of our backs. Our fingers gripped the earth. We felt the dirt gather beneath our nails. The weather was too cold for bathing. We sat silent on the dike, crouched in our dungarees and tennis shoes and flannel shirts, chewing on grass, pretending to smoke the long brown blades. Puffing smoke that was really just our breath turned thick and steaming in the dusk-damp air. We watched the men dredge the bay, scrape its belly clean of silt and oyster shells, dump the whole mess of wet, brackish earth onto the mudflats, where it would slowly cake and dry and separate into a million little islands beneath our feet. If you squinted your eyes just so, the mudflats stretched out like infinity, dun-colored shapes fitted together like a vast mosaic or coffee table puzzle. In a few months, we'd strip down to our underwear and swim in rain-fed pools, shrieking like gulls as cold water touched our 12-year-old skins. We'd catch tadpoles in the water that gathered in the cracks, myriad and no bigger than our fingernails. The day I first laid eyes on you, rain beat down like fists outside our schoolroom window. I bent over my desk and dried my hair with paper towel, looked up at the sound of the opening door, and there you were, a vision in a synthetic pink polka dot pantsuit that hugged your every curve. I was all lines and angles, elbows and knees, but you were pear and plum, delicious to behold. Aurora, your name a soft caress of vowel and alveolar trill. I'd never encountered anything like you. You smelled faintly of musk and metal and tangy overripe fruit, a scent I later came to associate with menstrual blood. I shut my eyes, inhaled, filled my lungs with you. The teacher told you to sit down at the back of the room, and we were all so quiet we could hear your thighs chafe against each other as you walked. They made a swish-swishing sound. It was the sound of a woman's body, not a child's. You tucked yourself into the desk beside mine. Your flesh was soft, but your eyes were sharp as knives, black and shiny as the mud dredged from the bottom of the bay. I felt your eyes cut through me, keen but not unkind. I looked down at my wet shoes. My hair dripped onto the floor and made a plashing sound near my feet. Those eyes, those sturdy breasts and limbs. Beside the bulwark of your body, I was nothing but a blade of marsh grass bent by rain. You were what they called a child of the earth. Your voice was gravel, smoke, and thorns. You were pretty in a country sort of way, round-faced, freckled as an egg. Before your dad lost his foot at the pulp mill, before his mind drifted away like wisps of cloud, he taught you to shake hands, call adults sir and ma'am, sit silent as a lamb until spoken to. He also showed you how to shoot a BB gun at squirrels and crows, thieves he called them, always taking what isn't theirs. You ran fast as the wind that swept in from the bay, nosed its way inland, forced all the trees to bow down in obeisance. You beat the boys at arm wrestling, whipped their asses when they got fresh, pushed a boy into the slough when he tried to grab a handful of crotch. The other boys laughed, but after that they kept their distance. Your family was constantly on the move, migrating from house to house, cul-de-sac to cul-de-sac. Your mother Cicely lying down with timbermen, sailors, mill hands. She does it for the money, some folks whispered, for rhinestones in crushed velvet cases. Others told it differently. She does it for bread, meat, and milk, to feed that strapping girl of hers. Drifters, they called the lot of you, passing through life like sand on wind. You couldn't wait for the wind to sweep you right out of Coos Bay, over the dunes, across the mud flats out to sea. All the way to Tokyo, you'd say, Moscow, maybe even Istanbul. Cicely would shake her head at this. No one ever leaves this place, she'd say, blowing smoke out the side of her mouth. The only way out of here is over the edge of the bridge and into the water below. We'd sit silent as the night settled over your house, weighing the truth of Cicely's words, till all we could see was the bright glow of embers arcing back and forth from her mouth to the ashtray. On nights when I can't sleep, I sometimes count them, all the people who ended up in the cold embrace of Salt Slough. There was Don's father, who drove the Lay's potato chip truck as far east as Boise and as far south as Chico. It was an accident, they said. He must have been bone tired after 24 hours at the wheel. Tina's stepmom swerved to miss a deer, its eyes shining bright and sudden before her, 2 stars in the darkness. Tanya's sister and her boyfriend disappeared after a Friday night dance. Sure, they'd been drinking. Maybe he even had his hand up under her blouse as they rounded the bend. And Angie, nobody saw her jump, but I bet she just closed her eyes and flew. Later, when they did the autopsy, they found a baby inside her, no bigger than a thumb. If we were to boil it all down to the bare elements of myth, I was the child of 2 bohemians, a poet and an art school dropout. You were the child of a hooker and a toothless old man. My parents chose Coos Bay on a whim. Your parents were stuck there for generations, with no option of escape. But you and I took root in the same few miles of coastal soil. We were both bred on chainsaws and shotguns, pickup trucks, and finger-fucking in the back seats of cars. We found our God in the mudflats, barren beaches, and sloughs that changed directions with the tides. We were the same, and yet wholly different, shaped indelibly by the strange, savage place we called home. It began with whispers and the passing of notes, back and forth from my desk to yours, missives of hunger and longing. Whenever the teacher's back was turned, I poured my heart out to you, told you how the simple fact of the nape of one boy's neck was a nail to my heart. You wrote in turn of another boy's animal grace, the way he paced from one side of the room to the other, restless as a lynx. His beauty made you cry, you said. I understood. We spent endless hours learning to make our tears flow on command. Think about something beautiful, you'd say, the view from your bedroom window, watching the sun sink like a gold coin into the bay. Try to remember the saddest movie you've ever seen, I'd reply, love story or something with lots of violins tugging at your heartstrings. How about listening to Cats in the Cradle? Concentrate on the son's broken heart, a father's love that comes too late. Think about your house burning down. Think about your dog dying. Think about your father dying. He's already an old man. By the end of 6th grade, we were experts, the very best crying artists Coos Bay had to offer. Standing in line outside the school building, looking out across the vast expanse of Brown Bay, sun low in the sky, we were breathless with beauty. A snowy egret stood alone against a crust of black muck. The cattails quivered in the breeze. A scavenging of gulls raked its way across the sea. One plunged into the dusky water and disappeared from sight. The surface rippled silver, bronze, and mauve. The sky was bruised, and the edge of the horizon unraveled like a skein of dark yarn. Do you remember how it felt like church was supposed to feel? We trudged home along the lip of the shore. You pushed your bicycle in front of me, and a haze of mosquitoes buzzed round your bent head. Your skin gleamed in the half-light, and the insects created a shimmering, black-flecked mandorla that surrounded you from head to toe. You were like the painting of Jesus' mother in the basement of St. Paul's where they held Sunday potlucks. You both had the same soft shoulders, the same sad, deep-water eyes. A pack of teenage boys caught us lingering by the water's edge, lifted their rifles, pointed them at our chests. Look at the little seagulls. Yeah, a big one and a little one. Let's kill them and eat them for dinner. No, let's just kill the big one. The other one's got no meat on her bones. We ran as fast as we could, hearts beating like wings, away from the boys and their guns. We passed glistening spiderwebs strung like Christmas lights across the clustered blackberry bushes, turned the corner by the laurel hedge, and came upon a boy and girl bound up with one another like fingers laced in prayer. His hands thrust deep down the back of her jeans, her head thrown back, mouth open in what looked to me like pain, her neck covered with blotches the color of plums. I saw him bite into the hollow of her throat like an animal, his thighs pressed hard against hers, a silent tableau of desire. Later you told me what we'd seen, love bites you called them, a mingling of pleasure with wound. We took the shortcut through the woods past the sewage pipe where older boys stubbed cigarettes, called us little sluts, and threatened to chase us. One boy crushed a banana slug beneath his boot, left it to ooze slime and guts onto the path. Fuck those golden motherfuckers, he cried. They laughed at the pricks of fear that made us run fast as we could up the dirt path, past the Van Buren's yard filled with rotting trucks, past the Dunstons' rabbit cages, till we reached your back door. You told Cicely what happened, and she threw back her head and laughed her smoker's laugh, ragged as a saw blade. She laughed until she began to cough, and when she couldn't stop coughing, you got her a glass of water from the kitchen sink. As the sun fell into the water, we hopped on our bikes and pedaled hard up Windy Hill. The breeze kicked up from the bay and lifted the hair from your neck till it streamed out behind you like silken tails of shooting stars. At the crest of the hill, we stopped and looked back. The whole town spread out before us. We could see Boyd the bull shooters with the bodies of half a dozen headless cows glistening in the afternoon light. We could see the Pied Piper, where Crystal sold frozen burritos and slushies. We could see the Stagecoach Inn where Angel's mom worked the night shift, serving drinks to tired mill workers. The hill was speckled with little shacks and double-wide trailers. A gust of wind could sweep it all away, you said. I wished it would. Already, I long for the communion that comes with disaster. Already, I love racing breathless past everything that might ruin us if we lingered too long. Is everyone able to hear it okay? At this point? Okay. This next piece is a piece I wrote recently called Strangers Paid to Pick Up the Pieces. It takes place during COVID and after my divorce, and it focuses on a series of interactions that I had with strangers. Some days these are the only adult interactions I had, so they played a really important and complex role in my life. Everyone was paid to interact with me, and arguably even paid to be kind to me, yet somehow these interactions felt so much more than simply transactional. Steve Leopoldi delivers a bed. Steve arrives with the bed in the back of his pickup truck. He's black-eyed and handsome, not at all dressed for furniture moving. He's someone I would have courted had I been closer to life's beginnings. He slings the shrink-wrapped mattress over his shoulder and carries it into my bedroom. We peel back layers of plastic, and the mattress unfurls before us like a soft, white petal. I don't tell him I left my husband this morning, that tonight I sleep alone for the first time in 27 years. Soon Steve is perched on a wooden box strumming my battered guitar, and I am down on hands and knees in my dress, attaching the legs to the bed frame. I can tell he doesn't want to go, and that's fine. I enjoy the sounds of the guitar as sweat beads on my brow. Even more, I like that he keeps his hands and shirt clean while I squat here in the back of the house, hem-high tie, screws sticking out from between my teeth. As he leaves, he slips an engraved card into my hand. Steve Leopoldi, landscaper, guitar teacher, Renaissance man. Call me, he says. I'll teach your daughters how to serenade their sweethearts. Ruth stocks the liquor cabinet. Ruth owns the liquor store down the street with her husband Fang. She is tough as hickory wood, doesn't take shit from anyone, sports a tattoo of a rat on her wrist, which according to the Chinese zodiac means she must have been born in 1960, a few years ahead of me. Ruth says I look younger than she's ever seen me look before. What's changed, she asks. Left my husband, I say. I thought you two were happy, she says. Your liquor store made us happy. I place my bottles on the checkout counter. A ragged man in front of me runs his fingers over my whiskey bottle. You gonna drink all that at once, he asks. Nope, I say. It'll take me a couple of weeks at least. Ruth says, don't mind him, he's jealous. Wishes he had what you've got. A crummy divorce, I ask. 2 unruly teenage girls. The booze, she says. I'm talking about the booze. Ruth laughs as she hands me my bag, her mouth open wide as a barn. It's January. COVID is already making its way across China, and I have no idea how rare the sight of a stranger's mouth will soon become. LaWanda delivers groceries. It's the end of March, and COVID arrives in Maryland. Our lives are pitched into disarray. Nurses, child care workers, and drugstore clerks are dying, hooked up to respirators, unable to kiss their children goodbye, mowed down like meadow grass. I try to get my daughters to observe quarantine. They sneak out in spite of my warnings and come home after midnight stinking of weed and sex. I am afraid to venture out of the house to buy beer and eggs. I order groceries delivered straight to our door. LaWanda is late. I only know her name because it pops up on the screen of my phone. She is part of a new cottage industry, the first in a series of interchangeable delivery people. Lawanda carries 3 bags of groceries to my front porch, knocks hesitantly on the door. She whispers through the screen, "Mrs. Eva, I'm going to leave your bags right here." I bring my groceries inside and wonder what Lawanda thinks about going into supermarkets all day long, delivering food to strangers. Does she have daughters at home who smoke and neck behind the garage, whose wild laughter sends cascades of microbes into the living room air? Does Lawanda lie in bed at night, body clenched tight as a fist? Blink Washington unclogs the sink. I let the plumber in. His given name is Barry, but he goes by Blink. His eyes shine bright as dimes, and his crooked smile reminds me of my dead brothers. I shake his hand and immediately regret this act of physical intimacy during a time of plague. Blink crouches beneath my kitchen sink. I flutter about behind him, asking questions, making small talk, in between replacing washers and using his wrench to tighten pipes. Blink tells me about his second wife. "She's just like the first," he laughs. We talk about patterns repeating themselves, the illusion of freedom. Blink reaches into the drain and pulls out a clump of black, vile-smelling stuff. "Here's your problem," he says, handing me what must have once been strands of my elder daughter's golden hair.
There we go.
Dr. McFadden tends to the cat. The tomcat has dementia. He forgets to clean himself. His once shiny coat is reduced to a tangle of matted orange fur. He shits on the rug and pisses on the furniture. The house is starting to stink. "We have to do something," my daughters plead. I take the cat to the vet. Dr. McFadden used to front a punk band, and I admire the tattoo peeking from beneath the sleeve of his lab coat, a 2-tailed mermaid whose hips twitch when he flexes his bicep. He checks the cat's temperature. As he palpates the cat's belly and examines his tongue, we talk about the indignities of aging. "There's not much we can do for your cat," says Dr. McFadden. "He's old and he's set in his ways." He suggests I move him outside. I propose building a tiny cat house beneath the dogwood tree, under the sun, the stars, the fat white blossoms. We both reach out to stroke the cat's fur at the same time, and our fingers collide. I feel a small electric shock like the buzzing of bees. I yank my hand back as if touched by fire, and beneath my mask, I feel my cheeks burn. Chanlina dyes my hair. Working from home, avoiding movie theaters, coffee shops, and crowded bars, I no longer need to make myself beautiful. But vanity persists. I look in the mirror and see a mass of gray, disheveled hair. Perhaps I'm not much different from the cat. I call Chanlina. She's cut my hair for almost 20 years. She is no longer cutting hair indoors, but agrees to come and dye my hair on the back porch. It's cold outside. Chanlina wears a down jacket and sequined Uggs. We're the same age, but she looks much younger. Her hair black and shiny, her waist still shapely. She brings all her equipment, including a hair-drying chair and a garden hose. She spends most of an hour wrapping my hair in foil, transmuting my silver into gold, a true alchemist. We talk about our children, mothers, fear of death. She also tells me I need to wash my hair more often. She doesn't like to touch the greasy strands. "No man in his right mind would," she says. "We're middle-aged women. We need to stay on top of things." Officer Jackson checks for bruises. My daughters get into a fight with the police. It's 2 a.m. My elder daughter's boyfriend is arrested for driving down the wrong side of the road, high as the clouds. My younger daughter videotapes the cops because the boyfriend is black and the cops are rough. Another cop wrestles her to the ground, grabs the phone from her hand, grinds her face into the pavement. My elder jumps on his back and tries to pry him off her sister. By the time I arrive on the scene, both are in handcuffs, the younger screaming obscenities at the cop, her mask red with blood. I try to intervene. "Keep back, ma'am," says one of the cops. "Your daughters have assaulted a police officer. There's nothing for you to do here." A few hours later, I pick up both girls from the police station. Before we leave, Officer Jackson checks for bruises on my younger daughter's arms and abdomen, photographs the cuts on her face. She says, "That cop was an asshole." Officer Jackson sighs and puts down his camera. "Yeah," he says, "COVID's making us all a little crazy." The girls and I drive home in silence. I'm hardly ever up before sunrise, and through my tears, I notice the sky is the color of plums, the moon an oily smear. Nurse Rebecca administers oxygen. My younger daughter crashes the car. She is in the intensive care unit for almost a week, unconscious for 48 hours. Because of COVID, we can only visit her one at a time. I sleep in a chair beside her bed. I hold her hand in mine. It's still the hand of a child, all ink stains and bitten down nails. Rebecca, the nurse, is young, ponytailed, and optimistic. She reassures me that everything will be all right. But my daughter's oxygen levels drop into the danger zone. She trembles uncontrollably with cold. Rebecca slips an oxygen mask over my daughter's blue lips. Together we wrap her up in an inflatable plastic cocoon to keep her warm. The nurse touches my shoulder. Just you wait, she says. She'll wake up fierce as ever. But something inside me feels irrevocably broken, like a branch torn from a tree. Aisha assesses the damage. The tow truck driver hauls what's left of our car to an auto body shop. I call an Uber to drive me to the shop so we can assess the damage. It's a wasteland out here, nothing but weeds and automotive carcasses as far as the eye can see. I find my car and it's shattered almost beyond recognition. The door so bent out of shape I cannot open it with a key. I feel a sudden urge to lie down in the grass and give up. Instead, I ask at the front desk for help, and Aisha bounds across the parking lot, big and strong as a house, long braids flying. She wears her mask around her neck, flashes me a smile as bright and audacious as the dandelions bursting through the pavement. Aisha uses an iron bar to wrench the door open. "You won't be driving this baby again," she booms. The news is bad, and yet I want to throw myself at her feet, kiss the tops of her boots. Officer Chibudim checks on my safety. I'm losing my shit. My younger daughter finds me crying on the kitchen floor, a bottle of whiskey beside me, and it's not yet noon. "I need you to be stronger than this, Mom," she says. I call the behavioral health line. It takes half an hour to reach someone, and they tell me I can't talk to a therapist for another 2 months. I ask to speak to the manager, and I wait another 30 minutes for her to tell me the same thing. A tsunami swells inside my chest, and I scream into the phone. I accuse them of malpractice, slam down the phone so hard the screen cracks, and the floor is littered with a galaxy of tiny, shining stars. 15 minutes later, there's a knock at the front door. It's Officer Chibudim. He's a slight man with a soft voice, kind eyes, hands like birds. He asks if everything is okay. Kaiser called 911, he says. I tell him I need a therapist, not a police officer. I tell him my world is spinning out of control. It's a tough time for everyone, ma'am, he says. Zach Schmidt tattoos my leg. It's Mother Day and the brood X cicadas have returned. Their shiny black bodies and angry red eyes are everywhere. We find them on trees and windshields, in gutters and floating in bird baths. My older daughter suggests that 3 of us get tattoos of cicadas to celebrate surviving this endless year. It's a Sunday, and most of the tattoo artists are taking the day off. But Zach Schmidt is open for business in a warehouse parlor. Gotta feed the wife and kids, he says. He's practically a kid himself, all loose limbs and spiky hair. He tells us he's got more than 70 tattoos and rolls up his pants like to show them off. The girls and I spot skulls and devils, hot rods and bloodshot eyeballs. But Zach doesn't seem to know what he's doing. As the needle pierces my thigh, he confesses he's just an amateur. Whatever, I think. We're all just amateurs. And I grit my teeth and brace myself for whatever pain is to come. Thank you.